Good morning. My name is Misha Wooten, and I'm so excited to welcome each and every one of you to our worship service today. We've had an exciting month of hearing from different ministers in our church from the book of James. This week, we close out our series with Graham Baskin preaching on James 5. We're going to worship, we're going to praise today, and we're also going to hear from Gracie Benavides, who is one of our youth and family ministers. She's going to be giving us a talk about tithes and offering. We will close out our service after Graham preaches with Derek Wooten giving us the response. Thank you again so much for joining us, and we love all of you. Let's worship.
There is beyond the azure blue a God concealed from human sight. He tinted skies with heavenly hue and framed the world with his great might. There is a God, He is alive, in Him we live, and we survive from dust our God, created man, He is our God. Time ago, a God whose voice the prophets heard. He is the God that we should know, who speaks from His inspired word. There is a God, He is alive, in Him we live, and we survive from dust our God, created man, He is our God. Secure His life from mortal mind. God holds the germ within His hand. Though men may search, they cannot find, for God alone does understand. There is a God, He is alive, in Him we live, and we survive from dust our God, created man, He is our God. Upon a tree, a life was willing there to give, that He from sin might set men free, and evermore with Him could live. There is a God, He is alive, in Him we live, and we survive from dust our God, created man, He is our God. There is a God, He is alive, in Him we live, and we survive from dust our God, created man, He is our God, the great I
Lord, you're adored, you are exalted. Lord, you're revered among the nations. All will bow down at the sound of your name. Praises will ring throughout creation. Lord, you're adored, you are exalted. Lord, you're revered among the nations. All will bow down at the sound of your name. Praises will ring throughout creation.
happy day when Jesus washed. Jesus washed. When my Jesus washed. He washed my sins away. Oh yeah, happy day. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day, yeah. When Jesus washed. Jesus washed. He washed my sins away. Oh Lord, you know it was a happy day.
Jesus washed, He washed my sins away. Oh, happy day. He taught me how to watch and pray, watch and pray. And live rejoice.
everyone. Now is the time in our service where we will prepare to give our regular weekly offering. And before we do that, I just want to share a couple quick thoughts about some things that I feel like God has revealed to me this past week about my own heart and giving. So I want to start by reading a verse in 2 Corinthians 9. So verse 12 reads, "This service," referring to giving, "that you perform is not only supplying the needs of the Lord's people, but is also overflowing in many expressions of thanks to God." So when I first read this verse, I thought back to a time in my life where I was in between jobs and I didn't have a lot of income coming in, and I was really wrestling with a lot of fear in giving my offering that Sunday. But thankfully, I had some really awesome sisters in my life who helped me work through that, and I was able to give that Sunday and every Sunday after that. And I just remember the victory and the joy I felt every time I gave from that moment on. And so I started to realize that lately I haven't been as aware of that joy or that victory. And so I asked myself, why? And I realized that I have just allowed myself to be bogged down by life, bogged down by the busyness of it. Recently, me and some sisters just signed a lease for a home, and it's really exciting, but it's really stressful. And so I've just been allowing myself to be consumed by these different things. And I really have just been kind of going through the motions. You know, it's been easy for me to kind of give on Sunday and click that button and not really think twice about it. So I love this verse because it brought so much encouragement to my heart about giving. You know, not only is my giving supplying the needs of the Lord's people, but it's also an expression of my thanks to God. And I have so much to be thankful for, and I always will, because I am saved and I am forgiven and I have a relationship with God. And so knowing that every time I give, I'm able to thank the God that provides all these things just brings so much joy to my heart. And so I hope that provides you with some encouragement as well. And I just want to quickly share about just some ways to give. Right now on the screen, there will be a link that you can go to give online. We also have a church app where you're able to give through there. There's also many different options of giving where you can set up things like reoccurring payments. But thank you guys all for just your hearts to give and to supply needs, but also just by expressing your faith and your thankfulness to God in your giving.
Brothers and sisters, we are going to sing a song of praise to our good God. The song means, "Thank you very much, Father." And in the Nigerian language of Yoruba, it goes something like this. Oshe, Oshe, oh, Oshe, oh, Oshe, Baba. Sopranos. Oshe, Oshe, oh, Oshe, oh, Oshe, Baba. Altos. Oshe, Oshe,
morning, church. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Graham Baskin, and along with Emily Stewart, I help lead the campus ministry here. And today we're going to be having our lesson out of James chapter 5, if you want to go ahead and open up there. And what I want to talk to you guys about today is hopeful endurance. Have you guys ever noticed that you can be having the best day ever, and one thing can go wrong and ruin your day, ruin your mood? You can be having a fun week, a fun month, and then, man, something just comes along and it sweeps it out from under you. You know, this summer I felt this way. I ordered something off of Amazon, a disc golf basket where I could practice putting and do things at home. The parks had taken all of them out. This was right around the same time that they were taking out the basketball goals. And so I had ordered one off of Amazon so I could still play at home. And so I had gone back and forth. Should I buy this? It was a little expensive, and rarely do I buy things that are really expensive. And my definition of expensive is probably different than a lot of people's. But eventually I decided, hey, you know what? I deserve it. I'm going to get it. And when I ordered it, it was going to take a little over a week, which is pretty long for an Amazon package if you are familiar with ordering things from there. And so I was waiting for it. It said, hey, it's going to deliver Monday by 9 p.m. And so I was looking at it over the weekend, make sure everything was cool, no delays. And then it was saying, hey, it'll actually be there a day early. So Sunday rolls around, it doesn't show up. I look back, they changed it back to Monday. Monday rolls around, and the package isn't there. And so I waited all day. I'm standing by the window. I'm so excited, and it doesn't show up. And so I look, and what was weird is that it said it was delivered. And I'm thinking, man, somebody stole this, because it would have come in a pretty big box, like this high. And so I was like, somebody stole my basket. So I'm looking around, I'm checking Amazon to make sure my address is in right, or I didn't send it to my mom or somebody like that back in Georgia. But it doesn't show up. I called them, and they're like, sometimes it takes a couple extra days. It'll say delivered, and it actually will be a little bit longer. So they told me to wait 48 hours. I thought that was super sketch, and at this point I was getting pretty mad. So every day, and my roommates can attest to this, I'm standing by the window, waiting, looking, and finally it shows up, because I was starting to think, man, I'm going to have to say it never showed up, and I'm going to have to reorder it. It's going to take over a week. At this point, it was Thursday. I was going to have to reorder it on Friday. And so you got the weekend, and then it was going to take just about 9 more days for it to show up. So I was pretty mad at this point. And so finally it shows up, and I had been waiting, and basically my week was ruined. Because in the back of my mind, this whole time, I've been stressed, waiting for anybody to come and ring the doorbell, hoping it's my package, like a kid at Christmas. And eventually it does show up. You know what happens 3 or 4 days later? They open the parks back up. And so basically a week later, I'm barely using this thing because the parks put all the disc golf baskets back in. And that was just the most sad part about it. But basically, all that stress, all that worry was for nothing. You know, that's what I want to talk about today, is what are we putting our hope in? What do we rely on? I really believe that James chapter 5 has some incredible insights for us and some deeply challenging comments on how we live our lives and what we put our hope in. So let's open up here to James chapter 5, and we're going to start in verse 1. Come now, you rich people, weep and wail for the miseries that are coming to you. Your riches have rotted, and your clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have rusted, and their rust will be evidence against you, and it will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasures for the last days. Listen, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the luxury and on the earth in luxury and in pleasure. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous one who does not resist you. Man, James, he comes out of the gate swinging in this chapter. You know, this is one of several passages out of James' 12 wise teachings in this book. And it's really similar, actually, to a passage we hear from James' brother Jesus in Matthew 6, where he says in 19 through 21, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." You know, James, it seems like in a way he's expounding or showing what the end result will be if we do not store up for ourselves treasures in heaven, but in fact store up treasures on earth. Man, just like when I put my hope in that Amazon package and it didn't arrive, it did something to me. It put me in a bad mood. When we have put our hope and our trust in something besides God, it does something to us. You know, the things that we do something to us. What we put our energy into, what we invest in, it will shape who we are as people. What did it do to the people in James' example here? Man, it caused their doom. It said it would eat their flesh like fire. They weren't prepared for the day of reckoning when God is to return. They use the poor. They oppress the poor who are powerless to stand up for themselves. And they used it to benefit and make themselves richer. You know what's scary is that the New Testament has very few, if any, kind words for those who are wealthy or have an abundance of possessions. In fact, it teaches us that if we are wealthy, we can be easily corrupted by money and its deceitfulness, and it can pull us away, it can pull our hearts away from God. What's funny is that it honestly sometimes doesn't even matter if we have a lot. We can have a little bit of money or we can have a lot of money. I know this quarantine in March when the stock market was down, I downloaded that app called Robinhood. Maybe some of you have it. And maybe some of you listening are really tired of me talking about my stock investments. And it's been fun. You know, I put some money in, and I made some money when the stock market shot back up, and that was cool. And so, you know, I was thinking about it a lot. You know, at one point though, I really had to wrestle with my heart, because even gaining a little bit of money really got me messed up. You know, I had to wrestle and pray, especially in July into August, because I felt myself becoming consumed by how my investments were doing. I would wake up and anxiously check my Robinhood account to see if I had made more money or if my investments were doing well. And honestly, man, if you've been paying attention to the stock market the past couple weeks, it's not a fun season right now. But similarly with my Amazon package, my hope and my joy started to shift because I had become focused on these things besides God. What happened? My heart, it slowly got more and more greedy. It got anxious. It got stressed. It was filled with worry. This consumed my thoughts. Because the things that I was doing, they started to do something to me. You know, it's funny how making a little bit of money, it actually didn't make me more generous. Isn't that ironic? In fact, making money, having more money, made me feel more miserable, made me feel more anxious. You know, Rockefeller, one of the richest men, one of the first billionaires in the history of the world, was asked, hey, how much money is gonna be enough? You know what his answer was? He said, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And that's the way it is. No matter how much we make, no matter what we run to and we put our hope in, it always feels like, oh, I'm almost there. If I just got this, fill in the blank, I would be complete. And I think that we know deep down, it doesn't matter what relationship you're in, what job you have, how many zeros are next to your salary or your bank account. It's just never enough. You know, another thing that James pointed out is how the wealthy used what God had given them to oppress those people that they were actually supposed to be taking care of. Instead of using their abundance of possessions to even just fairly pay people, they stood on the backs of those who were poor to make themselves fat. How about you? How do you use the resources that God has given to benefit others? I do want to say, man, I know it's a tight financial season right now. I know a lot of us have actually, like these mowers here, have not been paid in a long time. And I want to honor that. And I want to say I totally understand what it's like to live on a shoestring budget as much as I can without a family. And so maybe you aren't rich monetarily. But Paul tells us, hey, we got to be rich in good deeds. That we have to pay the outstanding debt of loving one another. When I look around at the Greater Houston Church, I genuinely see that it is a church that is rich spiritually. You know, we have amazing, mature, wise followers of Jesus. Some of us, we've been reading our Bibles every single day, or almost every single day, listening to podcasts, watching sermons, all this kind of stuff for years. And how are you using that? I mean, if you're just a typical Christian for 1 year, you'll have read your Bible 365 times and have consumed, at minimum, 52 lessons. That is a wealth that has been put into your spiritual bank. If you are rich spiritually, how are you using that to benefit the city of Houston? How are you using that to benefit those who work at your job, or your family, or your neighbors? How are you using that to benefit and build one another up in the church, as Ephesians 4 tells us to? You know, I was talking with a brother recently about Christianity in the West and in wealthier countries versus Christianity in more impoverished or third world nations. And one thing we were talking about is how rich we are in terms of resources here spiritually. We have books, we have pastors, we have the internet, we have all these things, but yet somehow we are the poorest at times in our faith. And I think it's because we genuinely become more resource reliant than God reliant. We don't have that childlike, genuine faith. We think we know so much, yet we believe in so little. You know, God has given us a lot, but if we don't use it, all we are doing is getting fat spiritually. Learning, but never using it for the benefit of others. Man, some of those who are mature spiritually, please come teach us who are younger. If you have time, serve. Use that time to pick up trash in your park or in your neighborhood. Invite people over to dinner. Host them if you feel comfortable with that, COVID-19, or maybe wait a little bit. But if you have the ability to plan financially and know how to give advice for healthy, godly relationships, or you know how to prepare for the future and get a job, man, help with those of us who are younger and maybe struggling. Some of us have such rich resources and we need your help. And some of us who are younger, we have energy, we have passion, we have zeal, and we need to use those things to be able to help those. Maybe there's people in the church who literally are too ill to cook, or need help cleaning their homes, or babysitting, or whatever it might be, mowing the lawn, doing projects. Man, let's get involved in being a church that really loves and uses its abilities and God-given gifts to help one another. So again, what has God made you rich in? Can you disciple? Can you teach? Can you mentor? Can you plan a community service project? Whatever it might be. Don't complain. Don't wait for somebody else to say it or for the church to organize it. If you see a need, fill it. If you see a hole in the wall, get busy rebuilding it. Don't wait for somebody to tell you what to do. Just do it. And so why? Why do we do all of this? What is the framework for all of this? Well, that's what this next section in James is all about. If our hope is not supposed to be in wealth and in possessions, what is it supposed to be in specifically? What are we supposed to be putting our hope in? And how does this shape us as people? And James continues here in verses 7 through 11. Be patient, therefore, beloved, until the coming of the Lord. The farmer waits for the precious crop from the earth, being patient with it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also must be patient. Strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. Beloved, do not grumble against one another, so that you may not be judged. See, the judge is standing at the doors. as an example of suffering and patience. Beloved, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Indeed, we call blessed those who show endurance. You have heard of the endurance of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. You know, what's different about the beloved? And by the way, that's just an incredible name for those of us who follow Jesus. What's different about being the beloved? What does James say here? It's what we put our hope in. For us, our hope is to be in Jesus. That one day he will come back and he will redeem the earth. He will redeem creation and us along with it. You know, as I was reading this, I was struck by this question. How often do I think about Jesus returning? How often do you think about Jesus returning? Sometimes I think for us it can feel vague or nebulous or distant or unreal when we think about Jesus returning. At least for me, I know I can feel that way. Yet this is the hope of the Christian story, that one day Jesus will return to put the earth back to the way it was supposed to be. You know, James tells them to wait for it like the farmer waits for a precious crop. What are crops to the farmer? Well, man, the crops are their livelihood. This is the thing that they rely on to live, to put food on the table, to be able to pay for things, to trade, all this kind of stuff. This is a powerful contrast to those who are rich. Their hope is in their possessions and what their possessions can get for them, rather than being reliant on sources outside of them. Our call here is to hope in Jesus, nothing else. No money, no spirituality in our own selves, nothing that we can do, but in Jesus himself. It's to hope like our very lives depend on it, because they literally do depend on it. For me, I found this passage to be incredibly convicting, because it's been forcing me to reframe how I think and orient my priorities. Even my spiritual priorities. You know, sometimes I had to ask myself when I was reading this, do I care more? Do I put my hope more in how my ministry is doing for my spiritual well-being? Do I rely on my student leaders doing really well, for people coming out to events, for people studying the Bible, whatever it might be? Do I care more about my own personal righteousness, the growth that I've had, or the books that I'm reading, or XYZ? Have I created my own personal salvation justification list? Not that I don't think those things are important, because they're vital to do healthy spiritually. You guys literally pay me to help grow this campus ministry. But I had to realize I can't rely on those things. As much as I am here to shepherd and to lead and to pastor the campus ministry, I can't force people to be spiritual. I can't force people to become Christians. And so if my hope is in that, man, it's not going to go well for me. Neither can I say, hey, I'm the one who's making it happen for myself spiritually. No, because if I didn't have God's Holy Spirit, I would not be able to be pure, to be loving, to have the endurance that I do. I wouldn't even have you guys, this community that I have. And so I love that he points us back to the prophets here, because these guys had some of the toughest gigs. These guys got persecuted. They were in wartime. They were hated before wartime when they were saying war was going to come instead of peace. They were ostracized, punished, killed, whatever it might be. But their confidence wasn't in any of that stuff. They were just doing what God said, because their hope was that God was going to do something. That they were preaching even when everybody hated them, because they knew that God was in control. To me, that's beautiful in the midst of that suffering. You know, I think the most beautiful thing about putting our hope in Jesus is that results are less important. When my hope is in my own righteousness, then I actually have to perform. When my hope is in the campus ministry, I have to have a blowout semester in order for me to feel good. And honestly, this is tough, you know, but when I put my hope in Jesus, I'm free just to serve and to love and to do the things that he's called me to do. And recently, I really had a wake-up call with this. The first Friday of school, I was sitting there at the restaurant we were going to have devotional at. I was waiting for my small group to show up, 10 and under. And I was sitting there and I was reading a book, and my girlfriend called me, and she was like, "How you doing? Because you seemed a little off today." And I didn't even know I seemed off until she had told me earlier. But I was just kind of going through, basically Wednesday through Friday, the school had shut down because of Hurricane Laura. When we arrived at school, there was way less people than I thought there was going to be. There were so many other campus ministries out there. It was a really discouraging kind of first week, and I was talking to her, and what I realized was that I felt like a failure. I felt like I couldn't live up to people's expectations, but deep down I was actually more scared that I was genuinely a failure because I just couldn't see how I was going to produce results. And I had to fight through that, and basically almost every day since then, I've really had to fight to believe that God loves me and is working. And let me tell you, man, week 4, we're finishing up week 4. I guess while I'm preaching this, it'll be over this Sunday. God has been blowing my mind. He has opened up the gates. But I've even recently just had to check myself. Even while I was thinking about this lesson, I had to check myself and say, Graham, don't get arrogant. Don't get prideful because things are going well. Stay in a humble, praying position, just like you were when you were at your lowest on that Friday. You need to pray when you're at your highest and things are going really well right now. Like God is fighting, that you need God just as much as you did back then, because in reality I do. If I start to take control right now and put my hope in my own strength, in my own wisdom, things will fall apart, because that is not how God's church is built. That is not how you grow as a disciple or the kingdom of God. That's not how you live in it. Are you in a season of suffering? I know many of us are right now, some in really big ways. Job loss, people dying, lack of pay. There's been some brutally tragic things that have happened. And I think while all the good stuff is happening, I've seen Satan come after even the students in the campus ministry in a really tragic, unique way. Well, not even unique, but just hard way this semester. What I would just say to you is the same thing that James is saying. Endure. Endure. Do not give up. Remember where your hope is. It's not on how things go on this earth. It's that Jesus will come back and make everything right. It's not about a job or a relationship or dating or whatever it might be. It's about Jesus. And I know that is easy for me to say. I know that some of you have suffered much more than many of us, and definitely more than I have in my life. And I just want to say I really respect your continued faithfulness. But the point isn't to look at me. It's to look at Jesus. To look at his example of endurance. To look at people in the scriptures as examples of endurance. Just like we should look to you, perhaps brother and sister, and your example of faithful endurance. That's what's inspiring. Not when you're doing well, when everything's going well, but when I can look at a brother and sister who rises up over the challenge because they love God. Man, that's the stuff in stories that makes us weep in inspiration. You guys are the inspiration for us. I would just say, please do not give up right now. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. Some of us might not be suffering right now, but we know that suffering is a real part of life. And I think even as I was thinking about the campus ministry, these guys have been working so hard this semester. And there's been some things that have been tough, that have been hard, and some of my students have really endured some hard things. So we came up with a few catchphrases that have kind of kept us going and are a little bit comical, but really do sum up some biblical truths. So I wanted to read just 3 of them for you guys to help you get inspired by the things that have been inspiring us. And so, a little water break there, but the first one I wanted to read to you was, see the invisible, do the impossible. We know, hey, we don't live by sight, we live by faith. Not by what is seen, but what is unseen. The thing is, we can't see Jesus right now. We don't know when Jesus is going to come back, but we put our hope in that, and that he will redeem our suffering. Hold on, stay faithful, and through that, God will do incredible, incredible things. Another one we've been talking about is progress, not perfection. The goal is each day to be a little bit more like Jesus than the day before. Not that we expect ourselves to be Jesus tomorrow. Not to master everything in one go and then be crushed under unrealistic expectations, but every day to train to be more like Jesus, not to try to be more like Jesus. And the last one that we've been holding on to as kind of the first month has been winding down, is that we're tired but inspired. You know, they've been working so hard, but the thing about hard work and having big faith is that it actually makes you work hard. And working hard is tiring. But we don't want to grow weary in doing good, because we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And we have been seeing God do incredible things. Our labor in the Lord, we really do believe, is not in vain, and neither is yours. Our hope in Jesus isn't in vain. Even if we don't see the results till he returns, everything that we do matters. What we do echoes in eternity. And even if we can't see it for the next 20 years, we'll see it for the next eternity that is coming. We're not living just for this life, we're living for the life to come. And I just want to encourage you guys, man, this week, take some time to really do a personal inventory and say, where have I been putting my hope? Is it in God? Is it in Jesus? Or is it in this stuff? And start to make time and space in your schedule to reorient your heart and your mind back into Jesus. I love you guys. I hope that James 5 is a blessing to you, and that this week you can see the invisible, do the impossible, make some progress, and not worry about perfection, and that even if you're tired, that you'll be inspired.
Hey everyone, I hope you had a great worship service this morning. It's always great to be together, to sing, to pray, to be able to now take communion together. I appreciate Graham's lesson so much. Hopeful endurance. I like endurance, but just for a short time, or knowing that it's a finite time. Really long, I don't like a whole lot. Lifetime, definitely don't like. So that hopeful endurance, it's challenging. It's challenging to really consider unless you're really living it out in so many ways. Being hopeful, always keeping the right perspective. When I start planting my feet firmly here in this world, in this life, it's so much harder to keep that perspective. And then I really liked also the 3 sayings that Graham talked about. I like the last one. I'm tired but inspired. I want to be someone that works hard for God, and I always want to kind of pour out myself completely all the time, but I want to make sure that I'm working in faith, that I'm really living in faith, working in faith, so that I can be inspired, even though I'm tired at times. So thanks a lot, Graham. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you so much for the service today. Just a couple of announcements and reminders. Tom and Carol Newell will be here next Saturday. Now that's in 6 days. So next Saturday, Tom and Carol will be here. So let's put that on our calendars. Let's remind ourselves. But we're hosting a workshop with them on purity and how to remain strong in an impure world. So again, this will be next Saturday at 10 a.m. We'll be sending out the link this week so that we can all be a part of that. Feel free to invite your friends, family, neighbors to be a part of that also. And after service today at 12:15, we're having a congregational leaders meeting. We want to start sharing plans and direction about our first in-person congregational service, which is going to happen on Sunday, October 4th. Be looking for details coming out this upcoming week, how to be and how we're going to be as safe as possible, the direction that we're going to be taking. So be looking for those details coming up. And as we leave today, I just pray that you have a fantastic week. Have a great time connecting with your small group afterwards. If you're our guest, feel free to connect with the small groups afterwards, taking communion, taking up our offering. But have a great Sunday and have a great week, and we'll be praying for you.